said in numerous interviews, and as I continue to say, we have to go back to 1913 to understand this crime. And specifically what we have to do is we have to look at the Rockefeller Foundation and then a few years later the Wellcome Trust, which became the colluding parties that authorized the idea of allopathic medicine becoming the agency through which behavior modification will be done through numerous interviews. And as I continue to say, we have to go back to 1913 to understand this crime. And specifically what we have to do is we have to look at the Rockefeller Foundation and then a few years later the Wellcome Trust, which became the colluding parties that authorized the idea of allopathic medicine becoming the agency through which behavior modification will be done through numerous interviews. And as I continue to say, we have to go back to 1913 to understand this crime. And specifically what we have to do is we have to look at the Rockefeller Foundation and then a few years later the Wellcome Trust, which became the colluding parties that authorized the idea of allopathic medicine becoming the agency through which behavior modification will be done through medicine. Remember that the Flexner report had come out and it had basically said that if you had another way of healing other than the industrial pharmaceutical way of healing, it was going to be deemed quackery and we were going to throw it out the window. Shortly thereafter, you had the Wellcome Trust being set up. And if you look at the Wellcome Trust going into the Second World War, it was very explicitly the commercial offense of the United Kingdom on the German pharmaceutical chemical industrial complex. So to the point where if people want to, they can go back and they can look at literal battle plans. And I don't mean metaphoric, actual battle plans drawn by the Wellcome Trust on how you invade Germany to take out the pharmaceutical manufacturers and the chemical manufacturers of Germany. So when I say it was a battle, I'm not metaphoric in this. There's actually archived documents that show you that they had battle plans about how to take out the various, chloroquines and the various drugs for malaria, the aspirins, all kinds of things. And it's bizarre to look at this. Obviously, cocaine, one of the very major pieces of that pharmacopoeia back then, which was an enormous part of the business of the pharmaceutical industries in the late 20s and early 30s. And so if we don't go back in time, we actually miss the point that the Rockefeller Foundation and the Wellcome Trust became the organizing entities, which ultimately in 1947 put the World Health Organization on the map. But what's really interesting in that is in the charter of the UN-affiliated organizations for the World Health Organization, they wrote into the charter the absolute liability shield from all criminal prosecution in perpetuity for any person associated with the World Health Organization and any of its activities, where it quite specifically goes down to the level of saying you cannot be prosecuted for any crime of any manner in any way as long as you do it under the umbrella of the World Health Organization. It's important to realize that when we talk about the World Health Organization, we're not talking about an institution of the United Nations. We're talking about a criminal conspiracy that was put in place by two foundations who had a commercial interest in building a criminal liability shield for themselves. That's what it is. Never was a health organization, it was a criminal organization. And by criminal, I literally mean that. Under the Clayton Act in the United States, and under the Sherman Act in the United States, and under the competitiveness laws of Europe, what they did was a crime. They colluded, they price fixed, they did all of the things which were antitrust violations, but put it under the umbrella of public health, and everybody's supposed to go, oh, they're doing it for the good of humanity. Except when you look at the actual financial statements of the World Health Organization, you find out that by 1950, and then again in 1955, the singular focus of the World Health Organization was, are you ready for this? Vaccine promotion. Unambiguous declaration that we were in a public health emergency and that the World Health Organization and the CDC were the only arbiters of what the facts were. And so you could not argue the facts. Gates represents 88% of the donation to the World Health Organization from donor organizations and agencies. By any definition, that's a controlling interest.